is 6 o'clock, so let's get started. Good morning, or good evening, everyone. It's been a long day, sorry. We will begin our Board of Appeals meeting for the City of Holland, so welcome. Board members, I just want to remind everybody, our regular citizens of Holland who have volunteered and have been appointed by City Council to consider applications to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Housing Board of Appeals, and Construction Board of Appeals, as well as accommodations for persons with disabilities. This board must interpret each application as it relates to city ordinances. This board is not empowered to rezone or to take any action that could be considered rezoning. The agenda is in the order that the applications were received by the city. The presence of 4 board members is required for a quorum. It also takes 4 concurring votes to approve applications. When your application is called, we ask that you come to the microphone and state your name and address. We will hear the applicant first, and then anyone supporting the application, followed by anyone opposing it. After a public hearing is closed, there will be no further opportunity for public comment related to the application. Decisions of the board are final and are effective on the day of such decision. However, applicants may appeal decisions to circuit court in accordance with state law. If you elect not to stay for our deliberation and decision, you may call Community Neighborhood Services Department tomorrow morning to learn the results. These meetings are streamed online live, recorded, and are available to view on the city's YouTube channel. Now, we are going to proceed with our agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Considering the possibility of the goldenrod applicant being a little bit longer than the 27th Street applicant, I'd like to propose if the applicant is here for the 27th Street, that we move them ahead.
If the applicant is here for the 27th Street issue?
Yep.
Yes?
So then I'd like to make a motion to move the 27th Street application ahead of the goldenrod application.
I support.
We have motion support. Any discussion? All in favor of rearranging the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then I'll ask our clerk to read our new first item, please.
This is for application for the address 161 East 27th Street, application number 24.12Z. Robert Sharp is requesting a special exception to build an addition to his home at 161 East 27th Street. The proposed carport addition would be set back 4 feet from the west property line along the existing building line where a 7-foot setback is required. The Board of Appeals may approve this request if certain conditions are found to exist.
All right, we will ask our applicant for 161 East 27th to please approach the podium and review their application with us.
Good evening, it's Robert A. Sharp. My address is 161 East 27th Street. I would like to go backwards on from my existing carport. I have a 12 by 12 slab out back. I would like to go out 12 foot back from my existing carport. It would stay within the boundaries of the house at the back, and along the side it would stay concurrent with the side that's already there. That was there when I bought the house. It would be up underneath the eaves. I have 2-foot overhang eaves. I would like to go out over by the house. I'd like to stay about 6 inches away from the house so it doesn't rub up on the siding. And I would like to butt it right up against the carport. It would be 8 foot at the house, and it would slant down to the west a foot, so it would be 7 foot there, so the water would run off. The side would be enclosed like the existing one with polycarbonate siding to let the light in. And then in the winter, I put the polycarbonate on the back side of it to help keep the north wind out.
Keep the wind down.
And then I take that down during the summer.
Okay. So how long have you lived here?
I've been there 15 years.
Okay. So the carport was there?
Oh, yes.
All right. So it's going to basically assume the same configuration as what's already there as an extension, correct?
Correct.
All right. And it will be as proposed along and within the current lines, the west property line, that current,
Yes,
so you're not going to go any closer to the existing neighbor? You're going to stay on that same line? Okay. The other, so we have questions that we have to ask, and I'll just run through those. It just makes it easier for me, so to make sure we cover all the things, and we'll probably do it on the next one too. So I just asked you if it's along and within. It sounds like it is. Is it, is the current use or proposed use of the building conforming in the zone district? Obviously, basically, you're just continuing an existing situation, so it's conforming now, it'll conform when you make it
correct.
deeper. Is it in character, is the encroachment in character with the existing neighborhood?
No,
I mean, it is right now because it's there.
Yeah.
Not everyone's got a carport, but you're just extending what's been there.
Right.
Existing and accepted for the last 50 years.
Correct.
So you're not going and making a silo or anything weird like that.
no, I'm not.
All right. Will the carport addition be detrimental to the adjoining property or the neighborhood? I don't think it will. Have you had anybody express concern? Because we send out,
Everybody that I've talked to in the neighborhood is okay with it.
Yeah.
I brought my neighbor that lives right next to
Okay.
the west here,
okay,
so,
because we send the letters out 300 feet, is that what it is, from every applicant? So so all your neighbors got one. All right. I don't have anything else to ask you if you got any more to add, but
Any other questions from our board?
sometimes less is better, just
that's all I have.
just saying. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing and entertain anybody who wishes to speak for this applicant or against. Seeing nothing, I will close the public hearing and look to my fellow board members for deliberation or a motion.
It's pretty straightforward to me. I'd like to make a motion that we approve a special exception.
We have a motion.
Support.
We have support. Any other discussion?
So I think, like I say, we'll go through this list of line items that we do for every applicant. They all get one, in my opinion, and based on the presentation here. It sounds like the addition will be along and within the side yard setback of the existing building that's been there for 50 years. Its current use and proposed use of the building conforming with the zone district. It is, it's been there for 50 years, and we're not changing anything, we're not making anything weird. Is it in character with the existing neighborhood? Not everyone's got a carport, but it's been there for 50 years, so it's part of the texture of the neighborhood. And will the carport addition be detrimental to the adjoining property or neighborhood? And no one's stood up and said they're not happy about it. We have not received any letters. I think we got those covered. Derek, we good?
Good findings of fact?
Just the only one,
Yeah, go ahead. I can clarify.
yeah, I'm looking through here to remember which one I was thinking at the time.
Is it the one about, do you think there are other houses in the
That's where I was
neighborhood
going, yeah.
that are also close to their side property lines?
Oh, yeah, we looked at the aerial in study session, and it appears that, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but there is definitely a percentage of properties in the neighborhood, within the street even, we didn't even go to the next street over or further out in the neighborhood, that that are 50 feet wide in some cases, sometimes less than 50 feet wide, and are as close as this existing situation that we're reviewing this evening.
I'm good.
All right?
If there's any other discussion, then we'll go for a roll call vote.
The motion is to approve. Bedard,
Yes?
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
does Kim vote? Oh, okay, that's right. all right, sorry. Lockery
Yes.
and Sorick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And thank you. All right.
Leave anytime.
Yep. Now our next item.
I would.
If our clerk would.
The next application is for 712 Goldenrod Avenue, application number 24.09Z. William Sickle, on behalf of the property owners, is requesting a special exception to divide the property at 712 Goldenrod Avenue into 4 flag lots. Each proposed flag lot would have legal access to a public street. The Board of Appeals can approve this request if certain conditions are found to exist.
All right. If we could have the applicant come up and explain the application for us, please.
You bet. Good evening. Bill Sickle, 42 East Lakewood Boulevard, here this evening on behalf of M&V Land Holdings LLC. They are the owner of the property at 712 Goldenrod. With me this evening also are the principals of that entity, Mark and Michelle Longeron. They live next door to this property, and their business partner, Jeff Burke, who's a local custom home builder, and they're here to answer any questions that I'm not able to answer as well. As you're aware, we're here seeking special exception approval to allow 4 flag lots on this property. The parcel is just under 4 acres in size. The parcel would have 2 access points to Goldenrod. The northern access that I'm calling it would be 20 feet wide and would serve to provide access to lots 3 and 4. And the southern access would be 43.75 feet wide and would provide access to lots 1 and 2. The property is located in the low-density residential zone district. That district has a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet, and each of the 4 proposed lots are well above that minimum square footage amount. And also, that zone district requires a minimum lot width of 50 feet, which all of these lots also would meet. Utilities are available to all the lots. I think the survey in front of you shows how those would be accessed. Most of the utilities would come across the 20-foot northern access off of Goldenrod. Sanitary sewer would come from the rear, primarily from the south. There's access to sanitary sewer on Mr. Longeron's property to the south, and he'd create an easement for that to come through there. When the clients and I met initially to look at how to develop this property, we explained that there's a couple ways of doing this, one of which is the proposal that's in front of you. The alternative would have been to put in a public road to provide access to these lots in the rear. I think during your study session, you referenced this A1 parcel that Mr. Longeron owns to the south. There was a boundary line adjustment with that. But when we look at that parcel in connection with the parcel that we're looking at here this evening, that southern access is about 87 feet wide and would have been sufficient to allow a public road to have gone through there. That public road then would have teed off to provide access both to the south and to the north, and would have allowed for the creation of a number of lots. I think by my estimation, it would have been anywhere from 11 to 13 lots that could have been split off back there if you would have looked just at the minimum lot size requirements. That was not their desire to do that. When we looked at that option, they said, look, the Longerons live there. Their intent is to continue to live there for a long time. Their hope is that some of the lots they're creating, that their adult children now would someday possibly even build homes there. Mr. Burke looked at this as a potential building site for a home for him to live in. So being neighbors of the community, they wanted something different. And so we talked about the alternative, which was to provide access through these shared driveways. Under your zoning ordinance, you allow 2 homes to have a shared driveway. And so given these 2 access points, the northern and southern, we said, well, the alternative would be to try to do this as a flag lot development, and then that would allow you to do 4 lots back there. Their view is that that would have been much less intrusive to the neighbors to have 2 driveways coming back there than a large public road with a 66-foot right-of-way wrapping around the backside of some of these homes. So those were considerations that we looked at before we came to you to say, how do we want to go about to do this? And certainly, under your ordinance, you allow for the creation of flag lots in this situation, and so that was the route that we chose. We thought that'd be better for the neighbors. Under your ordinance, you have a number of criteria. I know you talked about them in your study session. I thought I'd walk through them as well just here. The first being whether or not there's at least a 20-foot wide access to a public street. I think as you can see on the plan, all 4 lots would have that. Lots 3 and 4 would share a driveway on a 20-foot access, and lots 1 and 2 would share the southern one. The second criteria is whether or not the lots meet the area and width requirements of the zone district. We've already discussed the size of those lots. Each of those easily meet those minimum requirements. And then the third criteria, and that was the one that you talked about most during your study session, is whether or not the proposed lots would be harmonious with the character of nearby land. And I think the key there really is looking at the size of these lots. I looked at it and I counted, I think there was 21 lots up and down Goldenrod on this segment, and I can't remember if that included my client's property or not, but roughly 21 lots. And when I looked at how these fit into the size requirements, 2 of these 4 lots would rank in the top 5 in terms of size for what's on Goldenrod, and all 4 of them would be in the top half or very close to it. I think within 1 or 2 spots of being in the top half. So I think when you look at that, they're very much in character with what you see existing on Goldenrod, and therefore would be harmonious with what's going on. The fourth requirement looks at whether or not there's any negative impact on traffic safety. Here we're looking at the addition of 4 single-family homes. I think the number of trips per day in light of what else is on the road, going from 21 homes to 25 would be negligible and not create any traffic concerns. The 5th requirement is whether or not it's served by city water and sewer, which it is. And the 6th is whether or not it complies with the codes and other ordinances, which they also do. So we feel that all of the criteria are met, and that it would be appropriate to approve the request this evening. I do know that there's a number of neighbors who have expressed concerns, and I know that nobody likes change, and certainly not when it's in your backyard, and can appreciate some of the concerns that the neighbors have addressed, and so can my clients. But what I said earlier is really what I wanted to emphasize, and that is before we got to this point, and they weren't privy to some of those discussions, there was a lot of thought and care into how do we develop this property and what do we want to do. I think it's important to note that the Longruns are local. They live next door. This is not an out-of-town developer who's just looking to maximize density and to squeeze as many lots out of it from what they could, and that's certainly not what they've done here. So I do think this proposal coming in with 2 driveways is probably the least intrusive compared to coming in with a public road. They still could do that and put in 4 lots with a public road even if they wanted the 4. But again, I think having a 66-foot right-of-way that wraps around the backside of the houses probably is not ideal. So we do think that that was a concern, and wanted to emphasize that they did try to think about the neighbors before we got to this point. So happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
I think you covered all the criteria on our list that we have to go through. One of the other things we were talking about was we have to decide front of the lot, which is the front for each lot.
Yes.
I mean, we have a recommendation from staff. It appears that the lots are big enough to accommodate any side being determined in front. Front doesn't say what way the building goes.
Right.
It's just for all the setbacks, I guess. Do you have any input to that, or are you
Yeah, no,
the fact that they're large enough and that everything's gonna work, basically?
They are, yeah, and we talked about that. We heard Tricia reference her recommendation, and
Okay,
my client
yep.
would be fine with that.
Okay.
I think that, putting the front yard to the east, certainly provides maximum separation for some of those homes. I think that makes sense. That's kind of the configuration my client was planning on anyways, and would like to be respectful of that. They don't want to try to be right on top of them regardless. So, no, I think that what was recommended would be fine with my client.
Okay, and not that you have a lot of input in that, but we thought we'd at least throw it on the table.
You bet.
All right. I don't have anything else, anybody?
Do you, maybe you can't speak to this, but do you know the history of the lot and why there's these strips of land out to Goldenrod? These remaining strips, I guess?
Yeah, I know somewhat of it. I mean, I was friends with the family who used to own the Longeron parcel in this area a long time ago, and remember being back there back in my high school days. So I do know that that was all under common ownership. In fact, the property that's just to the east I believe it's the Alta Marinos property. I think at one point that was all owned by a common owner, and it was a family member who then moved that house off of Lake Macatawa to locate that house there. So there was some commonality. But at some point in time, those lots were split off, and I think it was intentional that they reserved the 20-foot strip based on, under your zoning ordinance for a long time. That's been the minimum access that would have been allowed. So I think the intent always was to make sure that they had some access going back if and when this would ever get developed.
So there's been some history of intent to keep access for basically for a lot back there out to Goldenrod.
Well, and I want to be clear, I don't want to overstate. I mean, that's what it appears to me. I mean, knowing that this was all held by a common owner at one point, right? I think
Rather than to join it all the way through.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Seems awfully intentional.
Yeah.
Correct. Please.
Would the applicant like to speak to some of the concerns about the environmental piece and the nature quality of the parcel as it is now undivided? Some of the neighbors have expressed some concern over the disruption to that harmony, and other people sought their land specifically for the purpose of enjoying the undeveloped quality of the area. So if
Yeah.
you would like to comment on that, it might be helpful.
Sure. That's always a hard thing when you have private property rights and people have property and want to develop it. I used to live in a property that had a large common area next to me as well, and I always thought, boy, I hope it doesn't get developed someday because it's nice to sit and look at the woods. But the fact of the matter is, when you own private property, you have a right to develop it and use it as you see fit, right? Unless there's a nature preserve or other thing in place, which isn't the case here. So I can understand how neighbors would certainly like to continue to look at a vacant piece of land and enjoy trees and some open space, but unless you own it, that's just not how property is normally developed, right? There's a set of rights you have, and for the city to come in and say, we're going to force you to keep that vacant and available, there's a risk of a taking concern on the other end, that you're denying somebody the right to their use of their property. So I understand the concern, though, and I can sympathize with that.
Thank you for addressing that. I appreciate it.
There have been other concerns in the same vein about during the period of construction and how to minimize the disruption that takes place during construction. I mean, do you know the proposed length of construction for these properties, or is there ways that you can minimize the impact during this whole period?
Sure. So we're looking at 4 lots. We'd be talking about 4 single-family homes. I think it depends on the timing. I don't think they're all going to be built at the same time. I mean, I think when you look at the typical build length for a single-family home, it's anywhere from 9 months to 15 months. I don't know, Jeff. It depends on the nature of the home. I mean, Jeff is a custom home builder and builds some very fine houses, and some of those have enough detail that sometimes take longer. I do know that, Jeff has a lot of experience here. The plan is for him to be the builder for all of these lots, and he has done this for a very long time and takes great care of his building sites, and would certainly try to minimize that. I think there's things they can do, like minimize access points, try to come in from one way, and some of the other things to try to minimize any of the impact. But you have ordinances that limit the time periods during which construction to take place, from your noise ordinance, from when construction can start in the morning and when it can wrap up. Those are things that they can do, but obviously the Longeruns live right next door. I'm sure they don't want to be bothered either. So that's one of the advantages of having the developer live right next to the property.
Soil and sedimentation rules and stuff like that, but we have an experienced builder here that should have a handle on all of that.
Correct.
And I have a question for staff while we're engaging in this kind of discussion about construction concerns and things like that. Just for clarity purposes, the question presented to the Board of Appeals is for the purpose of lot division, and irregardless of what the specific construction plans might be. Only the setback, we're only looking to fix the setbacks, identify yard boundaries and things like that. Can you make that clarification?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So it's a helpful discussion to understand the sensitivity of it and the fact that there's been a response from neighbors and a concern. But the clarification for the board purposes is that we have a specific task. And while it's good to know those things, hear those things. Our job is to, your job, is to make those decisions based on the application that's in front of us, right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
See, I turned it off, I gotta turn it back on. Is that again, maybe this is just my own curiosities, we're working around an existing building there that's on the south end, right there, thank you, Tricia. That building is going to stay, of course, and we're working around that, and so
Yeah,
we're
it's gonna be removed.
parcel.
Yeah,
we're
that building will.
Parceling around it too?
Well, it hasn't been removed yet, so in order to get moving with the approval, we had to notch the property line around that building because they wouldn't allow it to run through an existing building. So it will be removed at some point.
Okay, all right.
And I suspect there might be a boundary line adjustment at that point to even that out once that building is out of there.
Thank you for,
Just leave it in there, it makes for interesting conversation later in life.
Yeah, no, we don't need that obstacle in the way.
all right, thank you for humoring my curiosities there. Any other questions from our board for our applicant? Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing, and right when I do that, I'm going to look to staff, because I know we've received a very large number of interest from the community that were notified about this, and I'm going to ask staff to summarize if we could. We have received all of the letters. They were all sent to us, and we have read through them. But if you could, please summarize them.
Yes, thank you. So we received several letters in opposition of this application. We received a letter from Michelle Trainer at 727 Goldenrod. And this is just a summary of each letter because the board did receive each letter in full and had an opportunity to review before the meeting. So for the public record, Michelle is concerned about ongoing and disruptive construction noise from building 4 new houses, increased traffic, speeding cars with people walking on Goldenrod due to the lack of sidewalks along Goldenrod. We received a letter from Michelle Sheridan at 692 Goldenrod. She is concerned about construction noise, displacement of this unique wildlife area, increased traffic on Goldenrod, pedestrian safety, infringing on the privacy of existing homes, personal health impacts and emotional distress caused by these mentioned issues. Carl and Jennifer Schroeder at 676 Goldenrod. They're concerned about disturbance of the existing peaceful and uncongested neighborhood, existing wildlife, increase in traffic and construction vehicles, impacts of water drainage and wetland areas. Gerald Brown, 668 Goldenrod. He's concerned about increased traffic, and he also suggested to have one access driveway with access off of 32nd Street instead of access off of Goldenrod. Amy Aldrink at 706 Goldenrod. She stated that existing homes are set back at a consistent distance as it relates to Goldenrod. The proposed flag lots are not compatible or harmonious because they do not follow this pattern. Lots in this area should be developed with spatial relation to the street and surrounding homes. Jeff Padnos, 188 West 27th Street. He's concerned about the less than 50 feet of road frontage at Goldenrod. There are no existing flag lots in the neighborhood. The proposal appears to be a planned unit development or site condominium, which would change the established residential character and have a detrimental effect as it relates to density and traffic on Goldenrod. Snow and debris removal along a 20-foot wide access driveway. Stormwater runoff onto neighboring properties from the driveway. Address identification of the properties and homes for emergency personnel. Rebecca Altamirano at 720 Goldenrod. She's concerned about the 20-foot access via an easement was not the intent of the ordinance. 50 feet of frontage of Goldenrod is not provided. There are no flag lots in the neighborhood, therefore the proposal is not compatible or harmonious. It would change the character of the neighborhood by adding 4 additional homes. Fire safety concerns with no fire access road, dead-end driveways, potential for driveways to be blocked in the event of an emergency. Lack of details on the site plan, including location of driveways, driveway material, fire hydrant location, and location of utility connections. Jennifer Rogers at 743 Goldenrod. She's concerned about the wildlife that's currently living on the wooded lot, current traffic on Goldenrod, increased congestion, construction in the road for utilities and power poles, emotional distress due to additional congestion, traffic, and increased potential for traffic accidents, no sidewalks, and poor lighting. Rebecca Altamirano sent a second letter with additional concerns about the 20-foot minimum access to a lot sets a precedent that could lead to increased densification across the neighborhood. Development of the lots may not align with the spirit of the neighborhood preservation. Disruption of the existing harmony of traditionally sized lots and established homes on uniform and spacious lots. Fire safety concerns without a fire apparatus road. Shared driveway access and emergency access. The proposed lots are not harmonious with the existing lots in the neighborhood. The dense and poorly planned development is likely to disrupt the natural habitat and ecosystem that has been established, leading to soil erosion and drainage problems. Narrow access to flag lots may create a long-term infrastructure and maintenance challenge for the city. Reduced desirability of the neighborhood, which could lead to lower property values and decreased tax revenue. Antonio Altamirano, 720 Goldenrod. He's concerned about additional homes will increase traffic on Goldenrod. Existing traffic concerns with speeding. Narrow roads to access properties may be an issue for emergency vehicles. Increased vehicles from these homes will disrupt the peace of the neighborhood. Disruption to local ecosystems, potential soil erosion and drainage issues. Threat to wildlife habitat. Emergency access to the new homes, lower property values, decreased tax revenue, increased maintenance costs for the city of Holland, maintaining the existing character, construction noise. And we received a letter, an email from Hopwood Dupree, 1095 West 32nd Street. He's concerned about the impact on the neighborhood due to the proposed development.
Very nice summary. Thank you.
All right. And the public hearing is open, so anybody who wishes to add more to that, new to that, in support of the application, please step forward. Anybody who wishes to, opposition, also please step forward.
I would like to.
Please state
My
your-
name is Carl Schroeder,
Thank you.
676 Goldenrod Avenue.
Thank you.
And I would just like to mention that any development within 500 feet of a wetland or a stream which connects, obviously, to Lake Michigan, has to get a wetland permit from the state of Michigan. And I just wanted to make you aware of that fact, that before this is developed, those would have to be taken into consideration. And second, and to reaffirm, obviously, these people need to develop their property, and that's their right to do that. But an access off of 32nd Street would really reduce the activity in our neighborhood, and that would be a workable situation to me. And that's all my comments are. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Jeff Padness. It's 1088 West 27th. I'm made of 1088 West 27th Street. Our daughter and her family, the Altamanos, own a historic home at 720 Goldenrod. It used to be Mayor of Holland's home. It was on Lake Macataw. It was moved up the hill. It was a pretty dramatic thing. It happened when she was at Lakeview Elementary. That home has been preserved and restored for nearly 100 years. This proposal basically involves putting roads, involves surrounding their home with roads right up to the property line around 3 sides of their property. They call them driveways, but they're essentially roads. It had been our understanding that each lot requires 50 feet of frontage on a city street, but we've now been told that under special circumstances, as little as 20 feet of frontage may be acceptable. I would think that that 20 feet thing might have been a very old provision. I don't really know when that came in, why they did that, but 20 feet is very narrow, considering the need to keep it free of snow, and we'll just talk about that. We hope that the board, we thank you, by the way, for what you're doing as volunteers. It's no small deal, so we'll try to talk fast here. We hope that the board can use its authority to determine if this makes sense. In particular, we do draw attention to the road proposed on the north side of the property, which is also proposed as a potential site for sewer and water. The Aldermans have mature landscaping on that goes right up to the edge of their property, which would certainly be jeopardized by putting a road right next to them, or a driveway, whatever you want to call it. Snow removal will be a major concern. The property owner is not permitted to remove snow and deposit it on a public road or on a neighbor's property. There are similar concerns with salty water runoff if they use salt to which would be very bad for the landscaping. When we asked the city planning office about how snow removal could be accomplished with this configuration, we were told that this is not under the purview of the planning department, and that if the Aldermans didn't like it, that would be a civil matter between them and the neighbor. That would basically mean that you're being asked to propose something, you're to approve something that is easily envisioned to create civil litigation, which it's certainly not creating, as witnessed by all these letters. I had no idea there were that many. It's not creating a harmonious neighborhood, at least, although we are getting to know who our neighbors are better than we did, so we got that going for it. I'll just mention also that the builder told us that he does, that although the lawyer mentioned that he, the charming, heartwarming story that he hopes to build a home there for himself, he told us that he had thought about that, but that is not his plan. But in fact, he would propose to build one house or so a year, so that you're talking about a 5-year disruption process for the neighborhood. It's in particular, the second, I didn't hear the idea of the 32nd Street access would make much more sense. I'll say that with that drawing, the 47.5 feet could be made to be 50. That's an arbitrary, a voluntary decision, and at least those two would then comply. The thing with those, if they put four houses, any more than 2, they would have to have a better fire access road. So it's by putting in 2 roads, they're saying that that's less disruptive, that's 2 roads going in there. That allows them to get by with a lower level of the road safety and the load-bearing capability of the road. So we would urge you to ask them to consider other options. So thank you very much.
Just to clarify for the board,
I was thinking something, go ahead.
yeah, so I think what Mr. Padnos is talking about is a fire apparatus road.
Oh,
So public roads are considered fire apparatus roads because they meet the weight requirement for a fire truck. They're wide enough, they have fire hydrants. And when the city ordinance does allow 2 lots on 1 driveway, and they are not required to put in a fire apparatus
Right.
road or a private road.
the thing that came to my mind is a single road off of 32nd, serving more than 2 houses, would increase the size of the road
That's correct,
to a regular sized road, I would assume.
yeah.
So that would probably be a negative.
But it could be a private road, doesn't have to be 60. It could be a
Yes.
private road.
It could be a private road.
Bearing capability.
Yes,
And-
with load-bearing capability for a fire apparatus, not necessarily a public road with a
Gotcha.
66-foot wide right-of-way.
And a T-head, so that they don't have to go in there and then back up, back all the way up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if,
You come back to the
yeah,
podium if you'd like.
we like to record the meetings, and although we can hear you,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
we like to have it at the mic so we record it. So we appreciate the discussion, but we just want to have it at the microphone.
I'll just say, no, it's an important point, because I've had to deal with a lot of this stuff, and there's road, and I've been in other jurisdictions where the requirements are pretty stringent as far as all that, as far as fire truck access. And, you know, you talk to a fire operator about backing down, this is 300 or 400 feet, 20 feet wide with trees right there. And so, you know, I don't know whether the liability for the damage goes to the city if a fire truck hit it, or the person that put it in the first place, knowing and foreseeing that it's a very obvious hazard. You know, a proper access for fire and emergency equipment access. The other thing about it is 20 feet. If there's anybody that parks in a driveway all that length, I mean, now you for sure don't have access for emergency access along that very narrow point between trees, and it's not all that far to the neighboring, to Amy's house. You know, it's not set back that much. So, thank you.
And to clarify for those who may not know, apparatus, and the other people might just call it a fire truck. The firefighters call it a apparatus. I've been corrected way too many times. So, just for anybody else might not know what an apparatus is, it's just a fire truck. So my apologies to any firefighters. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Antonio Altamirano at 720 Goldenrod, and this is my daughter, Ayla Altamirano. So the first thing that I would like to address is the claim that there has been some type of consideration for the neighborhood and for the neighbors. And if you look at that map, we're literally being built around, and considering the area that is being built, and considering that we have 4 children, and the main reason we moved to Holland, Michigan from California is due to the nature and the nature of the neighborhood, right? So we are feeling that is not actually what's happening, and that we have no transparency in terms of what the plans actually are. Because as soon as we moved to Holland, Michigan, and bought this beautiful 100-year-old historic home and remodeled it, and we went through a lot, and we had to get a ton of permits, and we had to do a lot of stuff to get it to a livable, level. We started loving living here, because it's just a wonderful environment where to grow up, and you have nature literally all around us, which got us very, very excited about the place where we are. And we approached our neighbors, and we, with full transparency and honesty, said, we would like to buy your property when you're ready to sell it. So the moment that you're thinking about that, think of us and think of our children, and let us know what would be something that we can work with. However, out of the blue, this proposal for a development literally around us happened without us knowing anything about it. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at the good in this development. And I'm like, okay, maybe we could use those driveways to go to the back of our property. But the more that I think about it, what it's going to create is going to create a maintenance problem for our own property. And it's going to send, it's feeling, again, like California, where things are just done without much care for the actual feel of the neighborhood and the families that are being affected because of that development. so that's really what's from my point of view. That's what's going on. That there's not enough transparency, even in the way that the lots are being subdivided. Because as my father-in-law was saying, this could be a completely different plan that is just being said as being, a neighborhoodly kind of development, when in reality it might end up being condominiums. And then we, buy a house that is supposed to be in a low density residential zone, and eventually we will have condominiums all around us, right? So that doesn't seem transparent or neighborly from my point of view, taking into considerations that we took the first step and we offered to be the first to buy and conserve that property. So so that's one of our point of view as my family, and Isaac and Ethan, they're here too. I think that they're going to say something, but those are my 3 minutes, I think. And Ayla also wants to say something. So would you like to say something, Ayla? Okay.
I just want to say I really like the nature back there and all the animals that come back there. And I really don't want to see their homes go because that could really affect the animals.
There's a family of foxes that live there. Anyway.
Hello. I'm Isaac Altamirano. I live on 720 Goldenrod. And I have two things. Number one, just traffic in general. Like, when people are going through Goldenrod Avenue, they're going at speeds which are just like completely dangerous for like when I'm just like walking there or like going to the store or just anything. The second thing is fire safety. The thing, so I lived in California for 12 years, and just my concern is just like having a fire truck go through there, but like with like the just like having that area for there, it just doesn't seem like as safe as if it was like connected to Goldenrod or connected to another main road that already exists. So also just concerns with the nature. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ethan Altamirano and I live at 720 Goldenrod Avenue. First, I'd like to address the idea that these developers are being neighborly or caring about their neighbors. Like you can see, like the amount of people that are here, that's probably a sign that like they don't care about their neighbors. They're not giving a lot of care to the neighbors. Like if they were, there wouldn't be this many opposed to this development. Secondly, like on property 720 Goldenrod, there are two roads that go like several hundred feet up sides the property. That's a pretty major intrusion on property. That's not something minor. It's not like that's pretty major. And the third thing is, I don't see how two flag lots and 4 houses in the middle of this neighborhood is harmonious in any way whatsoever. There aren't any flag lots. You are building around a house. You are also like adding like 4 houses just like there that like don't go with the flow of the neighborhood, like just like single family homes on a street like with 50 feet of frontage. There's no other house or development like that in the whole neighborhood. And yeah, so this is not harmonious at all. and there's been no consideration for the neighbors at all. Like, even like there's so many people here that are just completely against this. So, and then lastly, fire danger and soil erosion. If this property is developed, you are removing all these trees, all this grass, and you're just asking for an ecological problem with soil erosion. Like, ever heard of like the Dust Bowl? Ever heard of like how that works? Like, there needs to be plants and things in the ground for the soil to stay cohesive and like not just like turn into a pile of dust, which we don't want. And yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Aldrich at 706 Goldenrod Avenue. You've seen the letters, so I won't read that. I do serve on the Historic Committee. I've served for many years on the Planning Commission, the Neighborhood Improvement Committee, the Home Energy Retrofit Committee, so I get it, you're volunteers, and this isn't always fun, so thank you for your time. I will piggyback on the compatibility, your discussion in the study session about what makes something harmonious, and time was spent talking about the square footage of the lots, so I completely agree that the square footage is appropriate for the neighborhood. With the development of the UDO a couple of years ago, and all the time and planning and public input that was spent with that, I feel like planners take a look at compatibility, not just size of a property, but what is the frontage like along the street, and what is the bird's eye view. So that's how I think of compatibility. If I'm walking down Goldenrod, all of the homes on the east line up, all of the homes on the west line up. There's different values, there's different house styles, but you get it. If you're looking for 706 Goldenrod, you know where it is. I don't know if you're walking down Goldenrod when these flag lots were developed, if you would understand where is that home, because it doesn't line up with everything else and follow the pattern and the harmonious nature of everything else that fronts Goldenrod. And then also just if you were looking at it from a bird's eye view and seeing this on paper blown up, which we have, but I don't think there's anywhere in a UDO or a Uniform Development Ordinance that was being developed that would plot this property and say this makes sense. I know this isn't my property. They have rights to develop it. And as much as I'd love, of course, for nothing to ever happen, in my mind, it almost makes more sense to have it be developed as a PUD with a road that has to meet requirements and has to meet safety, and if developed as a PUD, has to address proper screening with trees and landscaping and fire protection and all of the things that the neighbors are concerned about. So, thank you.
I really appreciate your time being here because this is a lot you're taking in. Excuse me.
Can I get your name and address real quick, please?
Pardon?
Could I get your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jennifer Schroeder, married to this guy on 676 Goldenrod.
Thank you.
And just to address, you just said something about the history. When we moved in, the person who lived in Michelle Sheridan's house next door to us was, I don't want to say he's an old man because I'm a lot older than I was when I moved in. So he was an old man, and his wife lived there. He told me it had all been his wife's grandfather's farm. You're talking about the history. I can't speak that it went all the way to 32nd Street, but it went down to the water. Her grandfather bought it from the Native Americans. So you talk about it's not filled in. Maybe it's okay to have some land that's not filled in. Let's preserve what's special about it instead of filling it in. The other concern that I have, though, is that we live at the bottom of the hill. And I know two families, completely different cities, both of them, and they had a development go up a hill from them, not far, and they began having terrible water problems in their house because of the congestion of the construction of the houses. and it came down into their properties. Both of them sold the houses and left because it was an issue. We love our house. We don't want to start having water issues. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's a consideration. There was a water drainage problem. Bert told me all about it. And it came down Goldenrod, and they had to put a huge drain by Jerry's house, and they had to put a lip in the road to contain that water. What's going to happen to the water from those houses? It's going to go somewhere. It's not going to just disappear. It's going to go somewhere. There's the wetlands really close, and the state of Michigan requires a permit to build within, as Carl said, within 500 feet of the wetlands. That's a concern to me. Let's preserve things. And I appreciate that it's their property and they can ultimately do what they want, But those are concerns. They're genuine concerns. And again, I thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Find my glasses. Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle. Yeah, you do that. Yes. I'm Michelle Sheridan at 692 Goldenrod Avenue. I moved in about, I think it was 14 years ago to this home. The attraction was that it had all this woods behind us. And I was there with my partner who tragically died 8 years ago. It took everything in my being, mother of a son, to keep that property. I could have let it go, and I probably should have at that time because it was a struggle financially. But I've worked very, very hard to keep it. The reason that I'm attached to it is because there's so much incredible wildlife. Here we are in the middle of Holland City proper, and there's woods, and there is no other place like it. So I don't want to make it look like every other place, because I also feel that part of the problem is that we're really harming our air quality. We have that in the soccer field off of 32nd is the Michigan Air Quality company or something, where I talked with a gentleman who works for it, and he said that they're testing the air quality. Are you laughing at?
No, I know it. I know exactly what that's for. Yes.
It's testing the air quality?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's the air quality monitor for Ottawa County.
Yeah. Okay.
In Allegan County.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm giggling
okay.
about.
Well,
it's
the
air quality monitor for all of Ottawa County.
Okay.
Not testing the biggest polluter in Ottawa County. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke to him, because I ended up seeing him the other day, and I was curious because they're starting to fix up that field because it's been terrible for many, many years. So when I talked to him, he told me how the ozone layer from a path around Lake Michigan, that we have really the poorest quality air in this like area, which I was surprised by. And then when I'm thinking about, let's put in 4 more homes and take out this wooded lot that is, helping our quality of air. And there's more families, some of us are getting older, but there's more families that are coming in that have young children too. So that's, that becomes, maybe we should be talking to the air quality people too about, decimating more and more woods. Yes, the owls that were there when a new home is now being built, and I spoke with the people and I said, the owls are gone. And that was one of the things that gave me a lot of solace and peace in my grieving, was walking through those woods and seeing these owls. And I'm trying not to. The owls made a home in a tree in front of my house after my husband died. And I would watch them, and I got used to them. They have gone now. They're not going to come back if there's more and more building. They maybe come back after this one house gets built. I can agree to that. Change is difficult, yes. Adjusting is difficult. I go kicking and screaming, but, you know, I can understand why people want to have a piece of property and develop land, and it's their dream and all those kind of things. But when you want the city board to say, let's have some balance here. Let's not just say because, you know, somebody owns land, then, you know, it's a free-for-all. I mean, I think there's a way to have some balance, you know. I am concerned, you know, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've worked with families and you know, helped families all my life, or all my working career life. And, you know, I love seeing all the new kids in the neighborhood, but there is no place for them to walk. You add 4 new homes, and I disagree. The way that life is now, you know, one home tends to have 4 cars, 5 cars. I mean, we are an industry of people each having their own car at a certain point. We're not just adding 4 cars, you know, eventually. I think we're going to add a whole lot more than that. And coming into this very narrow road, Goldenrod isn't a wide road at all. And you're going to have these 2 new driveways or roads coming in. You know, that just is adding to things. And cars, because of the way Goldenrod is with a hill on it, cars come flying. And yes, they are using it as a raceway between South Shore and 32nd. People, all of us, well, many of us, have called and said, can we do something? They put up the 25-mile-an-hour lot sign for 5 minutes, and then everybody goes back to, you know, the same old, same old. I worried about my son, because he was 9 years old and, you know, loved riding little dirt bikes and all sorts of things in the area, because we came from New York City and he now had land. It wasn't our land and back, but he rode his dirt bike in there all the time. But nobody said anything, and nobody was around to ask permission, and I hate to say that. I'm telling the truth about that. But, you know, it's unsafe for the kids. So the contradiction of there's a ton of traffic versus there's speeding cars. If there's a ton of traffic, how can there be speeding cars? It's very time-oriented, right? So, you know, during the middle of the day, it can be semi-quiet when people are at work. You know, early mornings, people flying through, or evenings, people flying through. And the other thing is, there's a large part of Goldenrod that doesn't have a light, and it happens to be near my house. I called and said, is there any way when my son was younger to put another light in there? Nope, the lights are spaced according to the plan. And I said, but what about safety? You know, can't we have some safety here? So there's all these issues, and that's why I think, you know, when I said I have some concerns and tried to talk with people, you know, I have some concerns. Can I understand what's going on? And, you know, to be told that, you know, my concerns don't matter because I'm not on any of those access roads coming in, well, it's the whole neighborhood. It's the feel of the neighborhood. It's the harmoniousness of the neighborhood. And that's, you know, that's important to all of us. We are there because a lot of it was because it abutted up to these woods. And if we all love nature, I mean, I'm not saying everybody has to. And I know that doesn't really, that not a lot of people care about that anymore. You know, it's ownership, it's the right to build, it's all those kind of things. But you are affecting your neighbors. You know, there's no way around it that you're affecting your neighbors. Now, again, at the end of the day, and I'll stop, but at the end of the day, I get that people want to build and they want to have their dream place, or they want their, you know, money for their retirement and things like that, which is what I've heard, right, through the grapevine. You know, I do understand that, but I'm going to be in agreement with that. Those 2 roads are a hazard, and they're going to cause destruction of the grounds and other people's property. And, you know, there's beautiful trees that have been, you know, aesthetically put up, and then you get the salt and you get all that other, you know, stuff coming. That's going to affect them. It's not going to affect me. I'm here not because this specific build affects me, But I see it would affect the Alderings and the Altamiranos, and I care about my neighbors, you know? So, yeah, the roads, the fire hazards, the ecological problems here, the air quality, there's a lot of issues. How we bring that into ordinance regulations, I don't know. But, let's bring it into another place as a small town that we all love to live in, because we do get to know our neighbors. We do care about our neighbors. So I just think it's more important to look at the big picture. And I'm not saying, everything has to go, but what I was saying about agreeing is, I think that road off of 32nd, then you're going to have to figure out, I think that's a better idea than these two roads going between these people's property. If that was happening to me, my property line is only 10 feet from my window. And if there was a road right there, I couldn't live there anymore. It's the way that the properties are divided that's a little screwy on Goldenrod for some reason. I'm not sure why, but so that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Michelle Trainer. I live at 727 Goldenrod. My house would be right across the street from the driveway to the south. So our driveways almost would be, right across from each other. I basically echo the same things these people are saying. I'm not going to repeat the same thing, but I would like to say again about the speed. Yes, it's through access. I was the one that lobbied for speed limit signs back when I think you were talking about a former board member or something, just to get the 25-mile-an-hour signs put in there. I've only lived there for 8 years, and those were just installed. Myrtle has sidewalks, which is the same kind of street. So I know that's not your purview, but I'm really hoping that as this moves along, that sidewalks are a consideration to whatever department needs to take care of something like that. I think a lot of neighbors would appreciate that. I think it was discussed in years past and it didn't happen. The other thing that I have an issue with, that when we did have a lot of constructions at the Altamiranos, not by fault of their own, but there were a lot of contractors in there starting at 6:30 in the morning with trucks beeping, beeping, beeping. Sounded like my alarm clock was going off. So I would really like the noise ordinance to be enforced if and when the construction begins, and that is heavily enforced, because 6:30 in the morning is ridiculous. So I realize they live there, but they also have a little more stake in that getting done than we do. So those are the two things I just want to stress a little bit more that were kind of missed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just added a few more things. Number one, I'm going to go into more detail about road safety. If you look at the two driveways, if you pull up to the driveway and try to exit those driveways, I'm just imagining this, you're going to have trees on either side. So your viewpoints when you're turning out of the driveway are going to be very limited. So that's just a whole other dimension of just road safety. Like if someone's walking there, it'll be hard to see them. That's not safe. And the second thing is what everyone has said here, is that yes, if you own a property, you have the right to develop that property, but it's going to affect everyone here very deeply. And if we're just looking at it from purely practical purposes, with going to landscaping, this could cost people money, because fixing landscaping, clearing snow, clearing salt, all of these things. So if we're just gonna not think about all the personal things, which I know we really can't have a huge impact, practically, it'll be not good for anyone.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else coming up to the podium, so at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing. So I'll look for deliberation from our board or a motion at this point in time. Any other questions or discussions?
I wrote down some notes as we were going along here, and I just wanted to kind of cover those. You know, the fire marshal has approved, or the fire chief, I'm not sure what the.
Fire marshal.
Fire marshal has approved this layout. I think by virtue of us all being here, public notice, all that type of thing, I think it is transparent process. That's one thing I can say about being on this board and in this city is they strive to be as transparent as possible, and I think they've done a decent job here. Density, I know that everyone talks about this tight density. If you look at the aerial and you look at the east side, you know, of Goldenrod, and you just look at the size of the properties all around, these proposed lots are good-sized lots compared to a lot of the lots in the neighborhood. So I don't think it's like this increased density, like I just don't see it. It's not what I would call a densely populated area by any stretch of the imagination. I do agree that 720 Goldenrod's probably got the worst scenario with those driveways on both sides, but those driveways are those pieces of property have been there for a long time, and so I think it's always been proposed, at least it appears to have been the foresight to make these properties like this with these two access points. So I think the writing was on the wall.
Well, maybe not put it that way, but when they purchased the house, they knew that there's
Correct.
a piece of private property that would be in their backyard that also has adjoining strips going on either
Yeah.
side.
That's kind of my indirect way of saying
The
that,
intent,
what I was
the
trying
intent
to
is
do.
there on both sides with access for a driveway.
I think also there was the question about people knowing where these roads are. There is a requirement for public display of address numbers. So they gotta be prominently displayed at those entrance points, so I don't think people are not gonna be driving back and forth on the street looking for those houses there is a requirement to have those addresses provided in plain sight. The wetlands, the drainage, the permitting, all that stuff, there is definitely stringent rules that need to be followed. And although we're not involved in those right now, I have the confidence in the city of Holland and all the other jurisdictions that watch those types of things, that they will be doing that, including, you know, noise ordinances and that type of thing. If there's an issue, you call, but there are processes in place that I think a lot of these things can be addressed.
Yeah, I actually had that written down as something outside of our purview. which
Right,
is
yeah.
Like
I'm
items
just
of
trying
like,
to say that
as of
there's
soil
processes out
erosion.
there. Yeah, that was the one I kept hearing.
The soil
wanted to
erosion
address.
and wetland protection is not within our purview.
It is not.
There are protections in place, there are stringent laws
Right.
in place. The state, Eagle, has permits and requirements that developers must follow. Permits must be pulled, and that's not something that, you know, things can be done within rules and regulations of permits. And once things are restored,
Right,
erosion can be managed.
correct. And again, that was
Right. Again, it's outside of our purview.
it is, but I wanted to make
At
sure that
this-
at least it's being commented that there are processes in place
And
and
outside,
agencies to cover that.
at this time.
Correct. My last comment was just that I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that harmonious of the neighborhood is not necessarily harmonious of the street. It is of the neighborhood. When we look at other people who come to the board and they this question of harmonious, it's not just your neighbors next door. It's not just the people across the street. It's the neighborhood. It could be 3 streets over. It could be 2 blocks down. It's the general neighborhood. So that harmonious criteria is a little more broad than just on your street. So that was just my observations, comments.
Well, while in the study session, we were also considering the street. It wasn't we were saying, well, you know,
Oh, no,
ignore
we
the
did, yes.
street and then look at all
Yes.
these other things in other places of the city. We're also looking down the street, and and as I think most of us went out to see the property. I just noticed, especially on the east side of Goldenrod, it's like, okay, well, that's relatively straightforward. I wouldn't say dense housing, but you can kind of see, in terms of harmoniousness, you don't have every house. Harmoniousness does not mean every house has to match every house.
No.
What you don't want is something extremely out of the ordinary, especially, I don't think we really deal with architecture, but if you had something weird where you're going along, there's ranch-style homes, and then there's a 10-story castle, that feels a little bit odd. And we have ordinances that are enforced to keep things from going way too far out of bounds here. So we're not looking at these lots and saying, well, you know, we got to make sure that, you know, they can't build a, you know, an 8-story condominium on this. We already have ordinances that say how tall you can build things. You have to have setbacks that you abide by. And as far as the lots are concerned, from our study session and from, I think, this deliberation, I think that we should come to the consensus that these lots meet the requirements. They meet the requirements that we have to judge them against for what flag lots, how they can be structured, how they can operate. We have to go by we're zoning board, so we deal with the zoning stuff. At LDR, does this abide by the zoning that is in this property? And at least as far as I'm concerned, it does. And I'd like to know if anyone has opposition to that, if you can persuade me to think otherwise. But at this stage, I'm relatively convinced, having visited the properties and the surrounding neighborhoods before the meeting, and not just the satellite photos, but if you look at maps, as far as everything's plotted out, we're good to go here. I am really concerned about the nature element of this, but that's part of the reason why I've been talking to people on city council about the ordinances, the setbacks and everything that we have to enforce here on the zoning board of appeals often makes it and encourages sprawling. It makes lots bigger. It makes it harder to, you know, make smaller lots with smaller houses for new couples just right out of college or high school to be able to afford. You've got this encroachment into nature because we have so much of this ordinances that originated probably in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We've continued to change our setbacks, and you can see that in our city. Closer to downtown, things are closer together because back in the day, they wanted to keep things closer together. They wanted things a bit more walkable. And we keep encroaching into nature because we keep changing our ordinances to make it harder and harder for us to not encroach into nature. So it's frustrating to hear all these neighbors come out and say, I love the owls. I love to see, like, there's a family of foxes. Like, my grandparents had foxes on their property. I'm just like, yes, I love that. Foxes are so cool. But daggone it, I mean, this is a private property, and it's kind of inevitable with the way that this is set up right now. They have the ability to do this with their land. It's not set up as a public park. So I really want to preserve nature, but at the same time, we keep having these rules that we have to enforce that encourage sprawling of neighborhoods rather than building things closer together. So I definitely identify with the neighbors wanting things to stay the way that they are, because nature is wonderful. But as far as zoning board of appeals is concerned, through all the steps that we've gone through to look at this as logically and as objectively as we can, I'm not seeing anything that is technically a problem here. Can any of my colleagues on the board?
I speaking to the nature of things as well, we have the DeGraff Nature Center not very far. We have lots of other open properties and parks. I wish there were more parks, of course. I wish there were more set-asides, and, you know, it would be great. But we do, the city of Holland does have some amazing parks. The Van Raalte Farm and there's a lot of open spaces that still have a lot of nature left on it. And in where I live in Holland Heights, we have deer, we have turkeys, we have fox, we have owls, we have a family of hawks across the street from us that love to leave their dead prey all over our yard too. So, but they're fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, I do understand that there's a downside to nature too. I've had to capture 3
upside and downside
possums
to
this year.
nature as well. But we have fox, we have deer and a lot of nature in our neighborhood. And I live in Holland Heights, so and I have homes all sides of me. It's not like I have woods next to me. Anyways.
I'd like to just make one more comment, not about the nature, but about the development and the planning of it. I would argue that the use of these 2 driveways is really reducing the impact and actually lowering the potential of, danger by just, if you put in a private road, I think there'd be an issue there. I think having it downsized and having 2 driveways I think careful consideration was taken, and I think it's personally a good proposal. As much as nobody wants it in their backyard, I personally think it's a pretty good proposal.
I also think, actually, coming back, I had this written down too, the driveway out to 32nd idea would be a little bit more dangerous because 32nd is a more dangerous route to drive out to.
Give you some length to get to your property.
I
You know what I mean? You're gonna zoom up to where the house is.
Yeah,
If you had a driveway out to 32nd, or if you had a residential house and you had a driveway out to 32nd, or you had an option to drive out to Goldenrod, and you lived in that house, which driveway would you use to get out to the street? Of course, I don't know. And yes, I hear the concerns about sidewalks too, and I wish there were more sidewalks in town also, but that's again, outside of our purview. There's a lot of things that came up today that are concerns for the neighborhood that could be brought up in other areas, but they're outside of our purview that would prohibit, that are not on the proofs here or on any major obstacles that have set precedent in the past or may set precedent in the future as well.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special exception.
I'll support it. But I do think we will need, for a motion of approval, we will additionally need to determine what the front yard lines are in each of the 4 lots.
I'll include those in the findings of fact. Thank you.
Okay.
Finding of fact, basically the questions that were asked that the applicant actually covered right up in the beginning was, will each parcel have a 20-foot wide legal access to a public street? Yes, it will. Will each proposed lot comply with the area within area and with requirements of the zone district where located, the LDR, and it will.
I just want to add to that. I think Tricia went over that pretty clearly with the proofs.
She never showed that, yeah.
In the study session, yes.
Yeah, basically what we did is, we looked at each lot, and we actually had the square footage of each lot, and each lot far exceeded the 7,000 square foot minimum requirement, as well as the 50 foot minimum width. Is each new lot compatible and harmonious with the established character of the adjacent neighborhood and homes? I think it is. I think the lot size, I don't think they're not putting trailers back there. I think as much as it's in your backyard and it's something that you've been used to, you've enjoyed a right, or you've enjoyed somebody else's property for a long time, and unfortunately, at this time, they've decided to improve it, divide it, develop it, whatever it may be. Will the 2 curb cuts have a negative impact on traffic and safety? I personally don't think so. I think 4 houses is not not going to be the issue here. I think the sidewalk may be an issue, and the fact that it cuts between 32nd and South Shore Drive. That's the biggest issue, in my opinion.
Which is not changing.
Which is not changing, correct?
Correct.
And I live on a street that goes from 32nd to South Shore. I can relate.
Before we go on to the next one.
Yes, sir.
It's still within curb cuts. To add to your findings of fact, the Transportation Department has reviewed, and they don't have any problems with adding the 2 driveways to
Beautiful,
Golden
thank
Rod.
you. Each property will be served by water and sewer. And where it's coming from and where it's going is not determined at this point in time, but they are required to provide that.
And that was actually reviewed also in study session, how these will be served.
Correct. And does the split comply with the Land Division Act? And it does. And then the things that Matt told me that I should make sure that I have on here is that the front yard for each lot would be as proposed, lot 1 being the east property line, lot 2 being the east property line, lot 3 being the south property line, and lot 4 being the south property line. I said a lot. Does it cover what we need over there?
Might be helpful for the first factor if you were to say what the proposed widths were for each of the accesses.
According to the plan, there is to the north driveway is a 20-foot access road. And then on the south, there's a 20-foot access road with, I think it's a utility, for a total of 43.75 feet.
And then the only other thing that I'm coming up with is the final factor. Does it comply with the Land Division Act? I can't remember if it was in study session or during the meeting that we talked about what kind of splits were allowed in the duration. Just a little more
It's
detail.
4 splits
for
4
10
splits
years.
in 10 years. Yep.
That's all I got. I think
All
you
right.
covered it otherwise.
Thank you.
Should we add to the findings of fact, the fire marshal reviewed this plan and agreed that it meets the requirements?
I think that'd be a good idea. Thank you.
Did you get that? Okay.
For which factor?
For, in terms of fire safety, in terms of supplying adequate water, actually improving with the additional fire hydrant.
Okay.
All right. If nothing further, I think we'll go with a roll call vote.
The motion is to approve with conditions. Bedard,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Lockery,
Yes.
Van Antwerp,
Yes.
and Sword.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right. Last item on our agenda is for the approval of the regular minutes from the September 26, 2024. I don't think I can make a motion because I wasn't there for that one.
Move to approve the minutes.
With
Thank
support?
you, Fred. Thank you, Matt. All in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. And one more motion, if we could have that, Dave, a motion to adjourn, if you could so make that.
Do we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I second.
There you go. And we are adjourned. Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
With an hour and a half to spare.